this era where one of the mega trends that everyone here in Davos is talking about is the change as far as globalization is concerned, also how geopolitics is reshaping globalization. Friend-shoring, near-shoring, these are terms that are coming up practically in every conversation. I know you believe firmly that we should not follow the argument of China plus one. It must be an India plus one strategy that we must adopt and take forward. What does that mean exactly?
Can I take a couple of minutes for
yes,
this?
please.
So, I believe, I just want to make this point clearly. There are 3 global transitions that are happening. This is for every country, developed or developing. First one is a digital or AI, I call it AI transition. The digital transition is a very broad term. Second is the energy transition, and the third is supply chain transition, geopolitical transition, whatever it is, all the rebalancing we are talking about. And everything else we talk is all within these 3. India is uniquely positioned in all the 3. On the digital transition, the reason we are uniquely positioned is because we've got a fantastic tech sector. We've got a huge talent pool. I mean, the number of tech graduates pass out in India is the highest and not comparable to any other country in the world. You can combine multiple countries, still they won't match the number of graduates we pass out. Third, in the last 5, 6, or a decade, we have demonstrated that we can leverage technology and do developmental projects and public delivery at scale. And this was most exemplified in the COVID handling. This has to be seen not only as a technology transition, I call it an attitude transition. What has happened in India? The mindset and attitude has changed. Every other country went for a COVID era, a Pfizer or a Moderna. India in the past would have run helter-skelter and see how to get a Pfizer or a Moderna. But in this situation, in the peak of COVID, the country had the guts to say that we will do it alone. I mean, there is something to be said about that. And that attitude, combined with the example of large-scale digital transformation projects. I mean, we built the whole app on the fly to vaccinate 1.3 billion people. We were all in a call every Monday evening, 7 to 8 o'clock. Business and government. So that's why the digital transition, we are extremely well placed. Energy transition, we are well placed because we are probably the only nation of scale where 2/3 of our growth for the next 25 years is going to come. So all our energy per capita is the lowest in the world. So it will increase. The amount of energy we're going to consume is so much, and all of this is new energy. So we are not replacing the bad energy. We are creating new energy for development. And to do this transition when there is growth, all of us who are in business know growth fixes every problem. You can have any problem. It will all be fixed by growth. I always say the priority should be, 3 priorities should be growth, growth, growth. And I think we have that opportunity to make the transition beautifully than any other nation. The third one, the question that Shirin asked, is India Plus. I think it is not about replacing somebody. The world needs resilience. Resilience has to take precedence over efficiency. Over the last 50 years, we have driven efficiency beyond belief. So now we have to go back to being effective first, then put efficiency second. So the India Plus is for India to take the lead, to build the supply chain is ecosystem. It's not one person's game. Nobody can do it alone. We need partners. We need to work with other countries. We need to work with companies, US companies, Western companies, other companies who are willing to work with you on a transparent basis. So India Plus, when I say that, I mean India takes the lead and builds this ecosystem so that we become an alternate, resilient supply chain for the world. It is not about replacing somebody.
Well, thank you for explaining what you mean by India Plus. And I think this again is an issue that is being debated at this point in time, that as more and more countries like India move towards creating these ecosystems, move towards creating their own supply chains, will it have an impact on inflation in the long term? But that's matter for another debate at another time. Minister Irani, let me address the issue of inclusive growth with you, because as Mr. Chandrasekaran pointed out, growth addresses many problems, but the point of inclusion also needs deliberate choices to be made. And that's what I want to understand from you. The work that's already been done, what more can we expect now on being able to create a social protection net, on being able to ensure that the widening income inequality, that gap reduces, is bridged as well?
I think if I am permitted to reflect in the eloquence of Chandra, there are 2-3 things that I would like to take forward from what he said. Firstly, what happened in the pandemic is that tenacity of tech met the audacity of administration. And that is what India has said to the rest of the world.
That's it.
And when you talk about inclusive growth, when you talk about social security, what the Prime Minister has done is that he has re-strategized how you look at welfare. And through his policies, and the only part that I'll differ from the eloquence of Chandra is that there is no shotgun pronouncement of outlays. There is a strategic pathway that is designated before the money is put to the number or the plan. So when I talk about social security, as you've so pronounced it, Prime Minister Modi looked at it from a social investment point of view, and that is a reorientation in governance that hasn't happened before. How did it play out? Chandra speaks about the consumption levels in Tier 4 levels of our country. How did that consumption get fueled? You have doorstep delivery of free food to 800 million people, thereby somewhere conserving their consumption capacity, and their purchasing power then gets either conserved or repurposed somewhere else. Apart from food, what you have done for 1 billion plus of your populace, and especially for those who are marginalized, those who are poor, is protect their pharmacological needs in a pandemic. You have delivered 2 billion doses of vaccine. And that is why I said that the tenacity of tech met the audacity of administration. As he said, the easiest thing for India to do would have been somewhere a victim of the compulsion of the alacrity with which the pandemic was spreading, that there would have been many pressures that a government faces that import that vaccine. And it takes a lot of political strength to withstand that pressure, and belief in the capacity of Indian industry to rise to that occasion, knowing well that in a time when global supply chains are choked or shut down, your industry has the capacity to fulfill your need domestically, and not only fulfill a need, but also ensure that jobs are kept secure. And that is what the India story is. And again, extending from what Chandra says, why do I believe in the India +1 story? You, Shireen, began this entire discussion about how globalization is getting redefined. And now when we talk about the India story, we say we now reflect the Modi ethos of human-centered globalization. That when many countries were devoid of pharmacological help, when they were struggling to get their needs of PPE suits or vaccines met, India knew that there are many countries with their back to the wall. We did not commercially exploit that urgency of many societies. We were still humane enough to supply pharmacy needs of many countries, at times at no cost, and at times at just about the cost of production. And we did it not only out of a governance plan, we did it out of an Indian plan. As Chandra said, there are many industry captains in this very room who are on call 24/7. We've told the world, especially at Davos, we never close for business. But we were at business, both of governance and manufacturing, especially when the world had shut down. And that is the potential of India that needs to be pronounced from every corner. We did not profit from your misery. We were humane in our approach. We were resilient in protecting our supply chains. And we still served a common global cause.
Well, thank you very much for that very eloquent insight into the audacity of administration and, of course, the convergence with technology. But, Mr. Vaishnav, let me address the issue of opportunity and the roadmap ahead. One of the big things that everyone here is talking about is the PLI schemes. The government has announced and rolled out PLI schemes across 13 different sectors. There are different stages of evolution at this point in time because the dates of rollout were different. The question now is, in light of the success of the schemes that have already been rolled out, does the government feel more emboldened and confident to do more, to include more sectors under the PLI schemes? And for existing schemes, for instance, like the FAME scheme, for the benefit of our viewers who don't know, the scheme that was brought in to try and accelerate the growth of electric mobility, the sun sets on many of those schemes in the next year or so. Will the government like to continue? Because investors investing will also want predictability and a roadmap of what incentives will look like. Are we likely to see an extension of the existing subsidies? And are we also likely to see new PLI schemes and new incentives being brought in?
So PLI scheme has proved out to be very successful, both for the government as well as for the industry. In terms of government, to what Mr. Chandra said, we don't put money just like that. We do have our calculations. We do economic IRR, you do financial IRR. So it's...
No, I was not saying that. I was saying you can take the decision upfront.
Of course, so I mean, just take PLI as an example. The outlay for PLI was about 24 billion US. The additional taxes that we are going to get just from the mobile PLI is going to be of that order. So just one mobile PLI pays for the entire PLI that we have for all the sectors. Combined together, the actual tax contribution, additional incremental GST and incremental income tax is going to be significantly more than the outlay that we put for it. What has happened is PLI first brought the assembly to country, right? Over a period of time, over a period of last 1.5 years, the assembly is now going deeper and wider. Component supply chain is shifting to India. Indian homegrown companies are coming up with components as well as many critical parts of the supply chain. And that is what is very, very encouraging. That is what is really good. We believe that, for example, this iPhone 14 is made in India, right? And now quite a few parts of it, quite a few components of it are now getting made in India. So that makes a huge difference. It is adding jobs. It is creating new economic opportunities. Are we likely to do more PLIs? Yes, there are many more PLI items in the work. For example, hardware IT, for servers, for laptops, for PCs. That is another piece to be still in works. There would be, this approach has worked well. So there would be more sectors that we consider.
Minister Vaishnav, Minister Irani, N. Chandrasekaran, many, many thanks for joining us here to give us your insights on what the India story looks like and, more importantly, where the India story is headed. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here this afternoon. Appreciate your time.